Hello, welcome to Keg That's YouTube channel. Today I am going to be making a cross between a Belgian blonde and a British blonde beer. But what I really want to focus on is getting the most out of this yeast. I've never used this yeast before, and if you're interested to know more, then do subscribe, because I'm also going to be doing a kind of review and my impressions of this yeast. But what I really am going to be doing today is a pressure ferment. There is an open ferment and a pressure ferment. Now, this sounds like an oxymoron, and what is the point in doing this, and why would I do it, and what am I trying to achieve? The beer that I'm making today, I'm going to go in the recipe in a bit and it's posted down below. It's supposed to have the sort of malt and hop character of an English blonde beer, but fermented with a Belgian yeast strain. With Belgian yeasts, they're very expressive in their flavours, and actually a lot of the flavour characteristics and even the mouthfeel of Belgian beers that we love comes down to the yeast. So if you think about a Belgian blonde beer, it has those nice kind of peppery and clove flavours, sometimes some banana flavours. That's mostly the yeast. Of course, it's complicated. They're actually very complex beers, so I'm not going to reduce it down to one ingredient, but it plays a huge part in the style. To get the most out of the yeast, it helps to do an open fermentation. It really helps the yeast express itself more. I've got a video about open fermentation. I'll post the link below, so after this video you can go and watch that. But what I'm going to try and do today is get the best of both worlds, which is to do an open fermentation so that I can really show off this yeast and what it's capable of. And then I'm going to close it up, put a spunding valve on the fermenter. And the reason why I'm then going to close it off is so that I can collect the remaining CO2 and carbonate the beer. And the benefit of this is I'm going to get all the esters and phenolics and all the characteristics of the yeast, but I then get to carbonate the beer with the excess CO2, and so I can serve straight from the fermenter into my keezer and not have to wait for the whole carbonation thing to happen. I've not used this yeast before, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. The recipe that I have is, I have 5 kilos of Plumage Archer malt, which is this British heritage variety I happen to have. So I'm going to use that in this, and I'm also going to have 250 grams of Biscuit malt, and that's going to add a bit more character, as the name says, more of like a biscuit character. I've got a load of homegrown hops, and at the moment it's harvest season. I don't know if the camera's picking up just how kind of messy my brewery is at the moment, but it's harvest season, so I'm harvesting a ton of hops. I'm making a ton of cider. It's all in here at the moment, which is why it's very packed in. There's a lot of fermenters with various country wines in and what have you. And so I'm trying to clear my freezer. So I've got some homegrown Cascade. If you're going to make this at home, something like Brambling Cross would work, or maybe a sort of new variety of British hops, or use whatever you want actually. Like, this isn't really about the hops. The brew day itself is actually a very regular, ordinary brew day. Nothing special, just mash everything in at 65 degrees, sparge, boil, add the hops in. I'm adding my bittering hops at 60 minutes, and then the flavour hops at 10 minutes. And this is the thing, like, if there's any left over, I'll probably just throw them in as a dry hop, and we'll see how it goes. It's all about the fermentation. So, doing the brew at the moment, let's get to the fermentation. It's got to the end of the brew day, and I have done my brew, regular brew as I was saying, and I chilled the wort to about 25 degrees, and then I drained into the fermenter. This is all what I would do in a regular brew, let the wort fall from a height so that it aerates as it splashes around. And I made a bit of a mistake. So I was planning on adding a bunch of hops at the end, however many hops I've got left over in the bag of hops. These are all homegrown, so they're not really like weighed out or anything. I just like shove as many as I can in, and then over time use them and reseal the bag. And it turned out that there was about 38 grams of Cascade, and I also added 18 grams of Fuggles. But what I didn't really take into consideration is that there was an awful lot of hop matter, because these are like whole hops, and they were all in the kettle, and it absorbed a lot of wort. So whilst I was aiming for 23 litres in the fermenter, I actually only got about 19. Anyway, I then put the lid on just to transfer it and took it to my fermentation chamber, where I undid the lid and I took off the top bit, and I kind of just balanced them on top. So it's open in there, it's not sealed, there's plenty of space for oxygen to get in, and I'm going to leave it there for 4 days at 25 degrees. Now, the reason for 4 days is because it takes about 4 days for the yeast to impart its flavour, for all the phenols and esters and all the things we want from this yeast to appear in the beer. And then I'm going to seal it, and then the yeast will carry on doing what it's doing. It will carry on fermenting, it will carry on creating CO2, and we're going to capture that CO2 to carbonate that beer. And the reason I'm doing this at 25 degrees, and it seems a bit warm for your average yeast, but a lot of Belgian strains can go up to 28 degrees. I was looking at Mangrove Jack's website, and they say that this can be fermented from 18 to 28 degrees. I've had a lot of success fermenting Belgian style yeasts at 25 degrees, so I'm going to do that. And this is really going to drive the ester production. Maybe next time I'll ramp it all the way up to 28. But let's see how fermentation goes, and I will see you when we are tasting the beer. Fermentation is now done, and I've got it in the keg. Fermentation went to plan, there's nothing really to note. I fermented at 25 degrees, and then this yeast was a bit of a beast actually. So usually there's high Krausen for about 4 days and it starts to die down. I noticed on day 2 the Krausen was already dying down, so I put the lid on then and started spunding it. I didn't actually add any gas, I just let the gas naturally build up, and then I left it for about another week and it seemed to be done. It was probably done after a week or so, and then I started to cold crash it, and I cold crashed it for maybe about 3 days, and it's been on the keg now for a couple of days. I have tried it from the keg, unfortunately I can actually film then, but let's see how it is now, because the carbonation isn't going to change a great deal in 2 days with it just in the keg. So it's come out really well. It's very much carbonated, it's got a nice head on it, and I know with Belgian styles it usually has this like really thick head. I mean, that's because the carbonation is probably quite a bit greater than what I've got here. Because I've only got one regulator, I sort of set it to an average carbonation, which is good for IPAs, Belgian ales, saisons, stouts, everything really. I can't really be bothered to like muck around with that kind of thing, but it's got a good head on it. It's quite hazy, which is surprising for a cold crash, and I'm wondering if it's a low flocculating yeast. I will have a look in a bit actually. I'm going to create another video about this yeast. It's the first time I've used it, so I wouldn't mind doing a review on it, so do subscribe if that's something which is interesting to you. The head is white, quite foamy, not very rocky actually. Oh, the colour as well is like an amber colour. So the aroma, I'm getting quite a bit of orange, like kind of a marmalade orange sort of aroma. Quite a bit of banana from the yeast esters, so the orange is probably from the Cascade, and a bit of doughiness as well. But yeah, it's very sort of fruit forward, very so I think a lot of that is coming from the hops and some yeast esters, so the banana will definitely be the yeast. Cool, so it's got a real range of flavours in there actually. I'm not sure what I'm trying to pick out first, because there's a lot of flavours going on and they're all kind of equal strength, I guess, and it's sort of like one after the other in quick succession, and I'm trying to pick them out. So it definitely has a complexity to it. So I'm getting the aroma as flavours as well, so it's got that orange, it's got a doughiness to it, like kind of a breadiness to it. It's got a biscuit flavour, and that biscuit malt is really playing its part, and I really like biscuit malt actually. I'm not sure why I don't use it more. For crisp malts, I think their amber malt is basically biscuit malt. Definitely getting some spice and sort of more of the phenolics, which is sort of bordering on an alcoholic warmth maybe. And the finish is quite long of like orange peel, I guess. The beer has come out exactly how I wanted it to. So with the open fermentation, it's really got a lot of the yeast characteristic in there. Very much got those Belgian flavours, and it's also got that hoppiness. It's got that British malt base of biscuit and bread, and they work so well together, I think. It basically tastes like a Belgian IPA, where you can taste the IPA and you can taste the Belgian. In terms of the mouthfeel though, because I guess this is kind of what we were going for, like, can we have an open fermentation and then quickly seal it up and carbonate that? And yes, it is carbonated. It has got a really nice mouthfeel. It's like a medium mouthfeel. It's quite smooth though. But yeah, it is carbonated, and this experiment has worked quite well. And I think that this is something I will do for a lot of other beers which are yeast forward. They require a lot of esters and what have you, a lot of yeast characteristics, and but just to carbonate it quickly, seal it up in the pressure fermenter, and then put a spunding valve on. And this has worked really well. And yeah, as I drink this over time, the orange flavours seem to fade a bit, and it gives way to more banana flavours. Like, you can definitely taste the yeast characteristics in this, which is great, which is what I was going for. I'll talk more about the yeast in the next video, but I guess I call this a success. Really happy with this. So if you want to give this a go, then do comment below. If you've got any questions, be happy to answer them as always. I'd really love to hear how your open ferments or your pressure ferments have gone, or if you've mixed them like this before, it'd be really good to hear. Or if you ferment in a really weird way yourself, of course, I would love to do that. If there's something that catches my eye, I'll definitely give it a go on this channel as well. So thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe if you found this useful. We've got loads more pressure fermentation videos coming up. Thank you for watching.